Imagine being an adult or even a small child or young adult who is deaf. Think about how it would affect your daily routine and all the things we take for granted and don't see as inconveniences. It would be frustrating, especially because not many people know sign language. I will give you some information on the deaf community, everyday challenges, and what can cause deafness. First, I will go more into depth on what can cause you to become deaf. There are many different reasons that someone can become deaf, including injury, disease, and genetic defects. The most common cause of deafness is exposure to loud noises. Just because someone is considered deaf does not mean they cannot hear at all. Deafness ranges from mild to profound deafness. Some people experience temporary deafness that can be caused by wax buildup in the ear, drugs, or an infection. Ringing in the ear, otherwise known as tinnitus, can occur on its own or be in conjunction of hearing loss. Some people think that as a hearing person, it gets harder to hear as you get older, which is true, but your hearing actually starts to gradually decline at 20 years old, starting with higher frequencies. There are different ways to categorize deafness. There are two main types, which are conduction deafness and nerve deafness. Deafness at birth is known as a congenital deafness, and deafness that occurs after birth is called adventitious deafness. Adventitious deafness is most commonly caused by noise. Noise accounts for over 1/4 of people affected by hearing loss. There are 3 bones in the inner ear called the malleus or hammer bone, the incus or anvil bone, and the stapes or stirrup bone. Conductive deafness is caused by a failure of these 3 bones to pass sound waves to the inner ear. Another form of conductive deafness is failure of the eardrum to vibrate from the sound wave. For example, buildup of fluid in the ear canal could dampen the movement of the eardrum. In most cases, you can be treated for this and you will return to normal hearing. When there is a disease, trauma, or another form of harm targeting the cochlear nerve, the result is nerve deafness. The rest of the ear may be working, but the pulse the nerves send don't make it to the brain. In other cases, it's the brain itself that can't translate the message from the cochlear nerve. Most cases of nerve deafness do not respond well to treatment and become permanent. There are many different causes of deafness. Some examples are hereditary disorders, where parents pass these genes onto their kids. It, in most cases, is caused by malformations in the inner ear. Genetic disorders. Some genetic mutations can happen as early as conception. Just a few examples of genetic disorders that can cause deafness are trisomy 13S, multiple lentiginous syndrome, and osteogenesis imperfecta. Prenatal exposure to disease. A baby who is born with either hearing problems or deafness were possibly exposed to certain diseases including German measles, influenza, and mumps. Some other factors that are thought to cause congenital deafness include exposure to methylmercury and other drugs like quinine. Noise. Loud noises like firecrackers, gunshots, or explosions can all be damaging to your ears. If you are standing next to someone and have to shout for them to hear you, it is loud enough to be damaging to your ears. The best way to protect your ears from loud noises is to use earplugs or muffs. Trauma. If your eardrum is perforated or you get a fractured skull or even changes in air pressure can all cause damage. Disease. Some of the diseases that can cause deafness include meningitis, mumps, chickenpox, and even extreme cases of jaundice. Other causes can include Meniere's disease and exposure to certain chemicals. Now that you know what can cause you to be deaf, I will tell you about how in some cases, research is leading towards a possible reversal. There are many different temporary causes of deafness, which include wax buildup, foreign objects, excess mucus, ear infections, and certain drugs. Recent news from Science Daily is stating that gene therapy has a new discovery with mice. A new gene has been found that could reverse hearing loss. This gene coding is called VGLUT3. This has only been done in mice. They get an injection and regain hearing in about 2 weeks. Different treatments that would be used for patients may only enhance sounds and not fully restore hearing. It is still being researched in mice but has had good success. They are hoping with further studies they will one day be able to inject deaf humans with a protein and reverse deafness. Next, we will talk about communication among deaf people. Sign language is the most common form of communication in deaf people. Most deaf people also learn to read lips as well as signs. And finally, I will go through day-to-day tasks that become difficult or an inconvenience to deaf people. Deaf people want to live normal a life as the rest of us. They want to have families, drive, have jobs, cook, clean, use the phone, watch TV, and take safety precautions. If a deaf person has a baby, obviously you need a baby monitor. Baby monitors for deaf people have flashing lights that alert them. You can also train dogs to alert you. Some people would not think a deaf person could drive, but they are actually very good drivers. They do not have distractions like phones and radios like the rest of us. Because they are deaf, other senses are heightened and they become very observant and careful. If you are cooking and need a timer, they make ones with flashing lights. They also follow the same concept with for doorbell and also fire alarms. The lights on the fire alarms become so bright they can wake someone from a deep sleep. If you call a deaf person, they have a phone that is almost like a computer. The deaf person types out the message almost like a text. It then sends it to the other deaf person, or in some cases to an automatic voice that reads the message to a hearing person. If the hearing person doesn't have a phone equipped with those needs, there are some operators that can translate over the phone for you. Same goes for the TV. The deaf person has to read closed captioning, but they have to imagine the emotions and the voices. We can conclude that the deaf community is bigger and affects more people than just the deaf, and how we all should have at least a basic understanding. In summary, I have covered what causes deafness and in some cases how it can be cured, along with communication and their daily lives. I hope you all have learned something and can be more understanding and patient